My name is Maddie Mellish, and this is my oes300 learning summary. First of all, I'll be talking about how I learned and developed my skills and knowledge this semester. So during our trip to Gari, particularly on the kayaking leg, I was made aware of the importance of researching and interpreting weather forecasts, in particular tide times, wind levels, and maybe in warmer months, UV and temperature. I sat in on a few conversations that our leaders were having regarding tides, the changing of tides and flow percentage, and this was something that I had little knowledge on before the trip, as I was predominantly planning the beach cycling day, so it was really great to learn from my peers. On our second night planning for our big channel crossing from the barge landing to Big Woody, we had some pretty lengthy discussions regarding the best departure time, as tides were changing at inconvenient times, meaning that we either had to wake up really early or leave late and risk getting in after dark at Jeffreys Beach. So the main factors in making that decision were looking at headwinds and tides, and collaboratively we came to a decision to wake up early, waiting around at the north end of Big Woody for a few hours before making our way down to Jeffreys Beach. In hindsight, leaving earlier made this first few hours of that trip pretty grueling for us, but it allowed plenty of time for us to arrive at Jeffreys in daylight and set up camp. That then leads me to my next point, which was leadership. As we decided to combine both groups G and H for the whole trip, it meant that, like on the day I just spoke about, we had 2 leaders every day, which meant that we had sometimes 2 different plans. All of our group members on their respective leading days displayed great collaboration when coming together to make the best plan for our group, which in a real world scenario is a necessary skill to have when working with schools or groups, as you might be working with a school leader or another leader that has a different idea of how the day's going to go. It showed me that you can never really be too prepared, but that your plans are sometimes only plans and Mother Nature can surprise you. I think that I developed my own leadership skills during the trip through my personal experience, but predominantly by watching my peers. As an example of comparison, on day 4 when walking from Lake Mackenzie to Benaroon, the leadership style was kind of laid back. There seemed to be not a lot of focus on time management. Saying that, there were a number of workshops to get through that day, but leaving late and having an extended lunch meant that we got in at Lake Benaroon almost at dark. In terms of route knowledge, any information that we were given wasn't really specific, and sometimes it was inaccurate, so we didn't really know what to expect, and it kind of made the walk a bit tougher. On the next day, walking from Benaroon to Dili though with new leaders, the group was always made aware of what time we had to be ready and going, and this was implemented by the leaders all day. The route and the day itself were laid out to us with very specific, significant points along the way. This is an approach that I would like to include in my own practice, as I felt it lifted group morale and it gave the group a sense of where we were and how far we'd come, and also allowed time for unexpected delays. During my own leading experience, I made an effort to try and engage in a conversation with all of the group by asking reflective questions, such as what was your favourite leg of the trip, walking, cycling or kayaking, and what was your favourite specific moment. During the cycle in particular, it was pretty tough, so this was an effort to try and distract the group and get them chatting amongst themselves, but also to provide an opportunity to reflect on our trip. I also came across some group management movements when leading, in terms of cycling order. So we basically had to rearrange the group in the first 10 minutes of leaving Dili village to put some of the slower cyclists who were falling behind to the front of the group. We found that this really helped with keeping everyone together, and I think that keeping everyone within a reasonably close proximity minimizes risks, but it also maintains a good group cohesion. I learned a lot on this trip regarding minimal impact. For example, the importance of picking up all of our food scraps and rubbish from campsites, how to sort your rubbish. I never knew that so many plastics weren't recyclable, or that food scraps took so long to decompose. This all kind of ties into respecting the wildlife on Gari and preserving their natural ecosystem, but also protecting our wider community and environment and improving our own knowledge on that. One of my favourite aspects of the trip were the workshops that each group member ran. I found that the most effective presentations were those where the presenter was confident and informed on their topic. For example, somebody that was confident talking about a specific topic was much more engaging than somebody that ran a ton of information. As interesting as it was, it often left you walking away with a sense of information overload. Using timing and location that tied in well with your workshop made the information presented seem much more relevant. My own presentation was on the recreational impacts on Kari of visitors, and also, although it was somewhat basic, it relayed information that linked in well with our own trip and provided an opportunity for the group to engage in a conversation that highlighted the impacts that we had seen with our own eyes and perhaps contributed to. This leads me to my second part of my reflection, the development of place-based knowledge. So, although I had been to Kari a few times now throughout my OES course, I found myself learning more about the island than I had ever before, perhaps because I was looking at it through the eyes of a prospective educator. I had begun to familiarize myself with the names and locations of the various campsites along walking tracks and what their various attributes meant in terms of leading a group. For example, Lake Mackenzie and Brummagem have fenced-off campsites to minimize dingo-human interactions, so students would be able to roam the campsite more freely than they would at, suppose, Lake Benaroon, where no such fencing exists. As dingoes are known to seek out humans for food, I would strongly suggest to students to keep all of their food outside tents and preferably in the metal boxes located at most campsites. In my opinion, it would be ideal to discuss dingo safety with students when reaching the first campsite. This would include toilet buddies, as a lot of the toilets are located kind of far from the campsites, appropriate food scrap disposal to minimize any scents that would attract dingoes, food storage like in the metal containers, and what to do if approached by a dingo, such as staying calm, appearing cool, no quick movements, and to yell out dingo loudly but confidently. In terms of route planning and scheduling for a group, I think it's really important to incorporate teachable moments and workshops in your daily plans. Having good knowledge of the walking routes and environments you're going to be in allows for you to plan where and when you want to include these moments. For example, Central Station is perfect for lunch if you're walking with a group from Mackenzie to Benaroon, and because it was an old logging community, provides a great location for educating students on European settlers and the disparity in tree sizes throughout the island. Allowing time for a reasonable break and a learning activity or discussion in the planning can ensure an early enough arrival at Benaroon to set up camp and go visit the lake. Since our trip to Kari, I've also learnt that Lake Benaroon has a great environment for teaching about vegetation and flora, and that first year OES content focuses on this, so planning to either arrive at this campsite earlier in the afternoon or leave a little bit later in the morning to run an activity down by the lake would be beneficial to the group. I learned on our trip that sometimes plans don't always work out, and as a leader you need to be ready to adapt to your environment accordingly. When planning to cycle between Dilly Village and Hook Point on the beach road, there are a few factors that need to be considered to ensure group safety is prioritised. These include tide times, wind strength, direction, and civilian traffic. Leaving in the morning before a high tide means that you are cycling as the beach decreases in size, leaving no time or space for unexpected delays and a shrinking road with oncoming traffic. So if high tide was at 10:30 like it was for us, it's best to leave after that rather than trying to squeeze in your trip before then. Even after high tide though, when the water is going out, a strong easterly wind could mean that the water levels are still reasonably high on that east coast of Kari, which leaves little room for a group of cyclists and road traffic. As a leader, it's important to continue to check weather forecasts and the beach itself before allowing a group to depart. And if conditions aren't favourable, sometimes that means having to make the decision as to whether the day should continue or not. In these scenarios, it's wise to have alternative activities or plans, such as maybe like a beach sweep to save time, to use up some time, or even that means shuttling a group up and down the beach in vehicles if needed.